Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack. Welcome to, I think this is the 4th episode of this mini-series where we look at two very similar heroes and we compare them and not necessarily decide which one is better, but which one you want to try to use in situations that you find yourself in most often. And this time around, we're going to be looking at the two main anchor tanks of Overwatch, which is going to be Reinhardt versus Orisa. Both of them boast very strong shields, but each of these heroes have very special hero designs or toolkits that are obviously special to their own, that makes them built for situations that, again, you're going to find yourself in. But if you guys are new to this series, how this works is we take two very similar heroes, like I stated before, and we look at 5 different categories. The first one is the role, previously named the positioning of both of these heroes. The second one is DPS / forms of fire, how they get damage off. The third one is their toolkit, what kind of abilities that each of these heroes have. The fourth thing that we look at is their ultimate, what it's supposed to do, the role of the ultimate, and the last and final category is the counter list, when you want to pull either one of these heroes out and what their main job is when dealing with these heroes. So that's how this video is going to be structured. If you want to check out my other videos where I look at Hanzo versus Widowmaker, I even did Soldier and McCree, and I want to say one other one that I completely forgot about. Once you start to make a bunch of videos, they all start to blend together after about a week or so. But let's get into these two main anchor tanks because there's some obvious aspects that you already know about, but the whole point of this video is to not tell you about the abilities in the ultimate, but really explain why these ultimate abilities and everything about this hero is in Overwatch and how you're supposed to utilize them. And I'll be the first one to say, I already know those comments type down below saying, oh, you suck at Reinhardt, this Reinhardt gameplay sucks. I understand, but, you know, a football coach doesn't have to be fit to be able to tell his football players what to do. So first, let's look at the role for both of these anchor tanks, and that includes positioning, because you'd be surprised how much people still do not know the positioning for these anchor tanks. But first, let's look at Reinhardt's role. And the first thing I want to engrave into your mind, that I know it's an obvious thing, but you'd be surprised how many people do not understand, is that your main role for Reinhardt is to protect the team. You have this 2,000 HP barrier, and we will get into that later, but that is so important in so many team fights because that means you can absorb 2,000 freaking hit points! So if you're thinking that your main job is to get every single kill on the field, getting gold limbs and gold damage and being the all-star of the team, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but you're not being effective with the tank or the anchor tank role, which is protecting your whole entire team. You're going to be a much more better asset protecting your squishies, protecting your DPS, whose main job is supposed to pull off damage and get a lot of kills, than if you're thinking, okay, F my team, it's the first fight, I'm going in and get it. No, calm down there, slugger, alright, chill. But that's not to say you can't go in and get kills. That's not to say that you're supposed to just stand around sucking your thumb. No, I'm not saying that. So understand this. Yes, your main job is supposed to be thinking about your team, thinking about your squishies, but it's also a balance because you have this big giant hammer that can get off a lot of DPS. So this is where the good Reinhardts and the godlike Reinhardts are separated by that fine balance of knowing when to protect and knowing when to go in, get damage, but more importantly, create space. But when we look at the other hero, Orisa, it is somewhat similar because you have that same shield protection aspect. However, with Orisa, you aren't tied to that shield. Now, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing because now you're free to do whatever. You can go on the right of the shield, you can go in front of the shield, you can sit behind it, preferably behind the shield, but you aren't always tied to the shield. So you can literally throw it down for your squishies and go off and do your own thing. And this is a bad thing because if you're on attack maps, you can't move with the shield. So you have to be smart with your placements, but it also means you need to know when to be aggressive with your shield placements, because once you throw it down, it's important that you have good positioning with that shield, because if you aren't that aggressive with it, you're probably going to die because you don't have that protection, but you got to push forward. That is why Orisa is not preferred on attack, whereas on defense, she is perfect. But now let's go on to the DPS for both of these heroes, and for Reinhardt's DPS, it is very straightforward. You have this giant hammer that does 75 damage. Swing and you're doing so much damage, but remember, you have to understand the role, because if you understand the DPS and how it's used, great, you know how to utilize 75 damage with every single swing. tell that to your dead back line though, because you didn't understand the role of Reinhardt. That's why the first thing I talk about is the role for both of these heroes, because if you know how to protect your team, but also know when to utilize that 75 damage for each hero that you hit in one swing, because you can hit multiple heroes, and that's when you need to realize and know when to use your hammer, because once you know, okay, my team doesn't need protection, let me get off some damage, you're going to be a god Reinhardt. And you might think, oh, that's easy to do, but when you're in the situations, it's a lot harder to know that. But when looking at Orisa's DPS, this is what's going to separate Orisa from Reinhardt and kind of helps you decide what do we need more, because yes, the shield helps, but also do we need a little bit more DPS or do we need more protection? Well, if you need more protection, you're probably going to go with Reinhardt. With Orisa, however, yes, you have that 900 HP barrier, but you also have great DPS if you know how to hit your shots. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to go into it, but really when you're deciding, okay, well, what kind of forms of fire do we need? If you're fighting more long range fights, Orisa is going to be the way to go, not necessarily because you can get a lot of kills, but because you can put constant pressure on the enemies at long range, like the widows and the soldiers. But now let's talk about the toolkit, the make or break aspect for both of these heroes. Yes, DPS is important, but my god, the toolkits is what's going to help lead your team to victory, but it's going to go completely unnoticed. So let's talk about Reinhardt. The obvious one here, the 2000 HP barrier that you can move at any given time. That is so important because while I'm kind of jumping the gun here when comparing the two heroes, Orisa, you can't move with the shield, and I already mentioned it previously, she's not favored on attack, and that also means you can't really create space because, well, you're centered around that shield. Unless you can get a few lucky kills, Reinhardt creates a lot of space with that shield, but also with the other tools in his toolkit. First, let's talk about his charge ability. One of the biggest memes in Overwatch. It was in the Uprising event. Honest said, Reinhardt don't charge in there alone, and it's true, but so many players, including myself, are afraid to use the charge ability because they don't want to die. But this is the key thing I want you to remember, and kind of the biggest difference between the two. Reinhardt needs a good coordinated team to be able to create space and get DPS off, because again, you need to find that balance of getting DPS and also protecting the team. But if you have someone like me that's just kind of standing there, not putting any pressure, not being aggressive because he's afraid of dying, you're not going to do anything and you're just going to be wasting time. But when looking at Orisa's toolkit, it's not all that game changing when compared to Reinhardt's toolkit. The shields, obviously Reinhardt's is better, it can move, and it has 1100 points more, and it has a bigger diameter, radius, whatever the math term I want to incorrectly use. What I'm trying to say is, obviously the shield portion, Reinhardt is better 10 times out of 10 because it can protect you more often than Orisa's shield. It's nice to have there though. Self-protection, that's okay because that makes her literally an anchor tank. It protects her from CC. But the thing that separates Orisa from Reinhardt is her pull ability. Her pull ability, or halt as it's actually called, is what separates okay Orisa's from godlike Orisa's, because once you utilize this pull ability, you're going to be able to obviously get a lot more kills, but be able to take care of key targets that otherwise would kill you if you didn't have that pull ability. Killing a Zenyatta that has his Transcendence, killing McCree on the ledge that has his Deadeye ability. You might not necessarily need that big shield for protection because you can just take care of the thing that you would otherwise need protection for. When looking at both of the toolkits, Reinhardt is a more everyday use toolkit. It gives you protection, it's consistent, whereas Orisa, you have to hope that someone would be punished when using the halt ability, and you have to hope that someone won't be able to take advantage of your tiny little 900 HP shield. But now let's go on to the ultimate portion, and this is going to be very quick. I don't really need to go too in depth with each of these ultimates because with Reinhardt's you have Earthshatter. Now the way that I look at Earthshatter is I like to use it as a setup ult. Like if I have a soldier ult, I tell my Reinhardt constantly, use your ult, I'm going to use my soldier ult, I'm going to get a team wipe, and more or less I get one kill because I freaking suck as soldier. But this is also a great ultimate to counter another ultimate. This is something that a lot of people are afraid to use because they don't think they'll get a lot of value. And that's so important when discussing an ultimate use, is if you're going to be getting a lot of value out of it. Let's say a Genji is ulting and you're Zen and you do not have your Transcendence. You're going to tell your Reinhardt to solo ult the Genji. That might sound stupid because I just used the term solo ult. it has a bad rep. But the thing is, though, you're going to get a lot of value out of it because you're killing the target that is not only going to kill your secondary healer, but probably your whole entire freaking team. Yes, the Earth Shatter is great for team wipes. I will not say that, but we already know about the team wipe aspect about this. But something that you might not know is that it's great for countering ults that would otherwise stop you from pushing or letting the enemy team continue to push forward. So just consider that when thinking about the Earth Shatter. But when looking at Orisa's ult, this is anything but a counter ult. In fact, you want to try to use this to initiate the fight. And I learned this the hard way, but there's not really ever a perfect time to use an Orisa ult. Yes, if you have a Soldier ult or a Pharah ult or any kind of DPS ult to combine this with, that's great. But this could be used just naturally. If you throw it down, you should be able to win the fight because you outdamage the enemy team, assuming that your DPS and even your tanks are able to hit your shots. But this could easily win you one single fight because if you focus their healers and then you move on to their DPS and their tanks, you didn't need to invest so many ults into this, into the bongos. But before we get on to the conclusion for both these heroes, which heroes we want to try to use in situations, let's talk about the counter list for both these heroes. But Reinhardt's counter list isn't going to be a list of heroes who he necessarily is on the field to kill, is more or less going to be a list of heroes who is less effective once he's on the field. And I kind of want to cop out and say everybody's less effective when Reinhardt is on the field because you have this giant shield that absorbs so much damage. But especially someone like Roadhog, Soldier, even a Widowmaker, a McCree, once you have that shield in front of them that is literally protecting the whole entire team, then that makes them less effective. That is why you pick Reinhardt, is to make them less effective and so that you don't die from those long-range heroes that you can't touch because, well, you aren't long-range. Orisa, on the other hand, yes, you need to consider who you make less effective, but this is a hero you want to look at who you can also kill. Again, when you're looking at the situation, oh, do we need more damage but also still need that protection? You want to go with Orisa, but especially when they have slow heroes like McCree or a Zenyatta or people that you can take advantage of because of that Halt ability, that is when you want to pull out that Orisa when deciding between the two anchor tanks. But now we got to the end of the video. Now we talked about the role, DPS, toolkit, ultimate, and counter list for both of these anchor tanks. What is going to be your go-to anchor tank? And I don't think I've ever had a clear decision. Most of the time I say, oh, well, you want to try to use this here in this situation, but it's not really the case with this one because Reinhardt is going to be your go-to anchor tank for pretty much all situations. There's not ever a time where you need a mobile shield that has 2000 HP. However, the clear distinction between the two anchor tanks of when you want to use them, because just because Reinhardt is great doesn't make Orisa useless, because there's going to be times where you're going to need an Orisa. But especially when you have a mobile comp with a Lucio and you need to be aggressive, you need to go and you need to charge and you need to get some DPS, you want to go with Reinhardt because he creates space. He's not just there to sit there and protect you. No, he can go in and get some DPS if he really wants to, but he can also protect the team. You just need to find that fine balance with Reinhardt, but once you find that balance, everyone's gonna love you. But just because you have the opportunity to pull off DPS doesn't mean you always get that opportunity with Reinhardt. Whereas with Orisa, this is when you want to pick her because you have constant DPS and you still have decent protection, especially on defense. So here's what I'll say. If you're mobile, if you need to create space, and if you're team oriented, if you have a Zarya, if you have a Lucio, if you can get bubbled by that Zarya and speed boosted by that Lucio, play Reinhardt 10 times out of 10. You have so much more protection and probably get all those DPS opportunities I keep mentioning. Whereas with Orisa, if you're on defense, you need a little bit more damage and you're also not going anywhere, that's probably when you want to pull out the Orisa. Orisa is a little bit more niche, is a little bit more situational, where Reinhardt, if you don't know what you're going to be running, if you don't know what the enemy team's going to be running, you can't go wrong with Reinhardt. There's rarely ever a time where I hear someone say, yo, we don't need a Reinhardt, we need an Orisa. It's usually vice versa. Yo, we probably need that Reinhardt because we're constantly moving. So that's what I'll say about the two anchor tanks. Both two great anchor tanks. Just Reinhardt overshadows a lot of Orisa and what she can do. But that's not to say she's not useless, or that she is useless rather. I'm gonna end the video. This is a long one. It's gonna be a longer time to record gameplay and edit, but it's gonna be all worth it. So thank you guys for supporting this mini series, even though I don't bring it that much, and hopefully I can bring another one. There's a lot of heroes out there. I got 2 in mind that I want to do for next video. So I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. More Overwatch videos to come, and bye.